Welcome to the Artful Teaching Podcast, where teachers are brought out of isolation and into conversation.
Here, we spotlight professional educators as both artists and leaders, and examine how the arts deepen student learning and improve school culture.
Education is a demanding field, and we've seen teachers rise to the challenges of their profession by leveraging the arts in the classroom.
Integrating dance, drama, music, visual arts, and media arts can bring so much joy, and we're excited to share that with you.
We're your hosts, Callie Phlox
and Heather Francis.
Thanks for joining us to hear various perspectives on the art of teaching.
Welcome to the Artful Teaching Podcast. This is Tina McCulloch, host of the STEM and Arts podcast series. Today we are meeting with arts integrators in the Research Practice Partnership through BYU and the Provo City School District. My guests today are Elicia Gray, Lisa Galindo, and Jennifer Heldenbrand. Thank you for joining me this evening.
You're welcome.
You bet.
Sure.
Please introduce yourselves. Tell us where you teach, grade level, and what brought you into this arts integration experience.
I'm Elicia Gray, and I teach I teach all grades art actually, but I mostly spend my time in an elementary school, K through 6. It's a Portuguese immersion school, Lakeview Elementary. And I spend my days teaching art integrated with other subjects, but art is my primary subject. So I was interested in this because it's my specialty. I try to take art and integrate it into other subjects. And I was really interested in speaking with other teachers who knew more about science than I did, because I am really arts heavy, but I wanted to know some authentic science connections that I could make with art things.
I'm Lisa Galindo. I teach third grade at Provo Peaks Elementary. I just finished my master's of STEM education and always loved the arts and was invited to the group and wanted to learn how to integrate arts in with the STEM.
I'm Jennifer Heldenbrand, and I teach sixth grade at Canyon Crest Elementary. I have been teaching for several years and have always enjoyed doing art projects with my kids, but wanted to have a better understanding of how to pull art and science topics in particular together. So that was the impetus to get me here.
Well, that sounds like great stories, and what a nice diversity of backgrounds. We have an art teacher, a teacher from a Title I school, and a teacher in a dual immersion program. And so all of us together really do have some interesting backgrounds, but also that idea of I can take my STEM core and add some arts, or as in Alicia's things, I can take my arts and add some STEM into it. So it's all for the betterment of our teaching, but it's to engage our students. And so I would just like you to share a story, an experience that you've had in your classroom where you engaged your students in an arts integration thing, and what extra outcomes happened from it, whether it was you got to know your students a little bit differently or the content really came alive.
This is Jennifer, and I'm thinking back to working with the moon phases with my students. One of the things that I did was also show a picture of the moon, probably a vintage 1930s, 1920s picture of the moon, maybe with a scarf around its head as if it were not feeling very well and looking a little pensive. So that gave a lot of conversation opportunity. But then it also led to one student in particular saying, I think I'm seeing a crescent moon. I think it's a waxing crescent moon. And we had to stop and think, and where does this come from? What's giving you this idea? And there was a shadow around the edge of that picture that was able to help the student think through that. From that, we learned the moon phases, we talked about why they occur, and their questions became quite intricate and wanting to know more. And from there, we created some lovely cyclical books that allowed them to create their own version of the moon phases.
Okay, thank you very much.
I'll go next. This is Elicia. So I think people forget that artists and scientists have a lot in common. And so when I was thinking about what I wanted to do with my students, I kind of tried to approach these scientific principles the same way as I would approach art principles, which is let's discover something new, or let's notice something new, or let's try to solve a problem. So both artists and scientists are essentially just problem solvers. So one thing we did with my students that was really fun, we talked about ecosystems, specifically deep sea fish, and what would keep an organism alive in the deep sea. And I was really fascinated by this idea of bioluminescence. And that's one of the fun things that I get to do as an art teacher. I get to just really explore something that I want to know about and then share what I find fascinating with other students. So I wanted to learn about why fish bioluminesce. Why do they light up in the dark? And what artistic principles would be similar or evident in that process? So we studied that. We watched a lot of videos about what deep sea organisms did. We found out why they would glow in the dark. Sometimes it was, to attract food or to attract mates or to defend themselves. So they had all these really interesting different reasons why they would light up. And then we had students design their own fish that would bioluminesce in some way, and it had to be as a result of one of those reasons. So they got to decide what parts of the fish would light up and how big it was, what environment it would live in, how it would survive. And then they designed and painted their own fish, and we painted it with fluorescent things, fluorescent tempera cakes and anything that was fluorescent. And then we put them in a dark room and lit it with a black light, and it bioluminesced just like it was under a deep sea. And that was fascinating. I loved seeing, kids that were like, whoa, that aha moment of like, we made that, we did that. That was really fun. But more than anything else, each artwork was completely different because it was something that they invented, but it was based on scientific principles that helped them understand how something would survive under, like in an environment that they are totally unfamiliar with. So it was a way to really just explore a different medium, try out something new, and they had a blast. And so did I. I was just learning new things.
I find that fascinating that you were able to take that whole idea from the science core, the idea of animal adaptations for the environment that they exist in, and then have the children themselves create something, that evidence, that those reasons that are tied to why they lit up certain areas. Were you able to show that to parents or at other classrooms to show off the kids' knowledge in that way?
Yeah, this is an excellent question. So we actually did this, we displayed this as part of an art show. And ironically, my art classroom is completely devoid of windows. It's black. It's a deep hole. So it was perfect. We called it the deep sea, and I put a little label outside. So the rest of the art show was like in the hallway in the gym and areas, but then we had arrows going to the deep sea, and we turned out all the lights and put the black lights in there, and kids could enter the deep sea. So it was a riot. They loved it. And so did I. I had a good time too.
and what a statement that is for students who are experiencing the whole exhibit, having the opportunity to go into the deep sea. I'm sure those conversations that they had with their peers were very rich because they had all that science evidence for the artwork that they were seeing.
Right. I also find it fascinating that I think parents were genuinely surprised that they were learning something substantial in the art classroom. We research ideas and we talk about really important things, and students are given an opportunity to solve real world problems in a format that they design. So it's a really creative space if we make room for it.
I love that. If we make room for it. And that's what this whole thing is about, STEM and arts, making room for both in our children's lives.
Being a regular classroom teacher, I mostly focus on reading, writing, math, science, and social studies. And my experience with integrating the arts as per se has been kind of like just tacking it on to the end as a culminating activity to show what we have learned. But this last time I thought, well, I don't even know my art standards for third grade. And so I thought, well, let's go look and see what they are. So I found a musical standard about composers and how they paint a picture with music and sound. And so I was like, how could that tie into what we're learning in science or math? And I thought, oh, we're learning about animals. I remember when I was young, I listened to Peter and the Wolf, and the composer was able to show certain traits about the animals, which is what we're learning right now is animal traits and how they help in their survival and other things like that. And so I was like, oh, that's really cool. Let's listen to this classical music with kids who are low income, who really aren't exposed a lot to classical music. So I turned it on, and they were so excited. They were so engaged. And they're like, oh, this is fun. And as part of it, the orchestra, some of the members had dressed up as the character that they were playing with their music. But it was surprising how excited they were to listen to it. And we had to cut it into 2 days because it was too long. But the next day, are we going to finish Peter and the Wolf? And I was like, yeah. So they were really excited. And I'm like, okay. So we would stop every once in a while and just kind of analyze, what animal is that? Well, that's the duck. Well, what's happening? Well, he's swimming. How do you know that, though? Because of the sounds, they were really fluid and flowing. Or what is the bird doing? Oh, he's chirping. Well, how do you know? How does the composer get us to think that the bird is chirping? What sounds do you hear? Or with the wolf, how do you know that's the wolf? And they're like, well, it has kind of scary, low sounds, and it sounds really scary, right? And so that was really fun. And then after that, I gave them 2 pieces of music for them to draw a picture of and visualize. We did The Flight of the Bumblebee, and I didn't tell them the name of the piece. And then we did William Tell. And I wanted them to think of an animal that those pieces of music reminded them of. And for Flight of the Bumblebee, I was really surprised. Only 2 kids drew a bumblebee. Others drew like a rabbit or a mouse or a squirrel or a bird. One student, he's like, I couldn't think of any animal, but I thought of a windstorm. It made me think of a windstorm. And I said, why did you think of a windstorm? And he's like, because it was really fast and strong. And I said, you know what? I can see where you're coming from. And I really like your windstorm. And I kind of told them nobody was wrong. And then we listened again. And I said, the name of this song is Flight of the Bumblebee. And they're like, oh my gosh, I can hear it. I can hear the wings flapping and it going bzzz. And then the William Tell, I had several kids draw a picture of a horse. And then I had several kids draw pictures of other animals. And I told them, it's all your interpretation of what the artist is painting in your mind. So nobody's wrong. And it was just really exciting to see their engagement, see their excitement, and see the pictures that they had drawn. And then I also thought, oh my goodness, there's a whole movie that deals with this Fantasia. And so they're really excited to see Fantasia now. And maybe we'll turn off the video and just listen to the music and they can draw another own picture.
You hit so many standards that we teach in our classroom. The whole idea of coming up with evidence and justifying it. I mean, that happened, and it's part of our speaking and listening. It's part of English language arts. They're creating things. Now, I'm just going to ask you one last question here. You've alluded to it. How many students were not engaged during this experience?
0.
And so you had 100% engagement. Now, I'm going to just ask you this next thing. When you teach a language arts lesson, and it's just language arts, do you have students who are not engaged?
Oh, hands down.
There's that classroom management thing.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the rich things about integrating the arts is that everyone's engaged because everyone has an access point. And I think you kept pointing that out. No one has a wrong answer. They're finding out in these types of situations is that their opinion is validated, especially when they can justify it. The other thing that I found very interesting, and just watching your face talk about, I was trying to come up with an idea. And I thought, well, what about music? And then you found the art standard that complemented whatever you were teaching in the classroom. And so that whole idea, too, of being willing as a teacher to expose your students to classical music. But then when you bring it in this way, they have an access point. And so, that whole idea of now we're going to watch Fantasia, they're like, yeah, and I'm not going to miss school that day.
Yeah.
So that's another thing that the arts do for especially Title I kids is it increases attendance in such a natural, desirable way. I mean, your kids came back to class. Are we going to finish our science lesson?
Yeah.
And what they were really asking, are we going to finish the music part?
Yeah.
So that's awesome. Okay. Now, I'm going to ask Jennifer a question here. What has been your favorite professional development experience as far as arts integration goes?
Oh, my goodness. Arts Express.
The BYU Arts Express.
Yeah, because it's 2 days well spent just having a joyful time with other people who want to be there too, and experiencing a variety of art forms if that's what you want to do, or concentrate on one. The keynotes are always excellent. The collaboration of just being with other teachers is great. It's one of the best things you can do, and it's not that expensive to go.
And I like how you mentioned that one, BYU Arts Express. It takes place in June. So as the school year is winding down and you are completely out of your teacher energy, that is such a good way to start off your summer and start planning excitedly for the following school year.
I think there have been years when I have felt run down by the end of the year, and this helps just give me that kickstart to enjoy my summer.
Also, I feel like they pamper you like you're a professional. They treat you like you're a professional, and they help you as an artist really enjoy rich professional experiences. It's like they say you have to nurture your own well-being through the arts as well. So it teaches you how to teach those to other students, but it also gives you this really beautiful array that you get to partake in yourself. So you're enriched personally, in addition to what you get to take away for your students.
I'll give you one more that I really enjoy, because one of my passions is doing book arts. And the University of Utah Marriott Library has a book arts program, and they have a summer intensive for teachers that has just been an awesome experience to attend. They're changing that up a little bit now so that they're doing shorter intensives along through the year. But check out their website. It'd be great to just get some experience with that. If putting books together, my experiences with my kids as students is that if I have a book for them to make, then that's something that they're going to keep and enjoy.
So that artifact that they get to take
Yes.
home and show off, and it's something that they will keep rather than, oh, it's that refrigerator thing that I did.
Yeah.
And that's really important for sixth graders to still have something that they do with pride, have put effort and thought into, and they're willing to take it home.
I took some home of something that we did in the holidays that they want back, and I've taken them home so I could make pictures of them, and they keep asking, when are you going to bring them back?
Yeah, and how often a worksheet or something like that would
Never.
ever ask, It's like they clutter in their backpacks or their desks, or you see them around the trash can on their way out the door, right? So, last question here. What advice do you have for teachers who are not currently integrating the arts or collaborating with their art specialists at their school to get involved in arts integration or collaborating with an art specialist?
I would say just jump in. It's not as hard as you think. If you are daunted, then ask for help. There are so many wonderful resources, and I know the art specialists at your school would be delighted to help you. But even if you don't have one, just jump in. I would also say start with what interests you, because whatever you're fascinated by, that energy is going to infect your students too. So find something that you really want to learn about and start there.
to piggyback on that, just start. It doesn't have to be a perfect lesson, and nobody knows if something goes wrong, right? Or, it's an easy fix. And through the years, you'll get better and better and tweak things here and there. And soon it'll become this fabulous lesson. And then once you've mastered that one, try something else.
It's real important to just jump in and go for it, because we all get a little embarrassed or afraid about trying something new and not doing it to the best of our ability. But you're right. Just go for it, because if we do that, then we're giving our students some joy along with ourselves. We want to help them succeed, and then it helps us be more successful as well.
Oh, thank you so much. And that's it. Just jump in, right? Well, thank you so much for visiting with me tonight. This is the conclusion of the STEM and Arts podcast. Make sure you check out the show notes. There's going to be references to the bioluminescence lesson plan of Elicia Gray, the University of Utah's Book Arts, as well as information about going to the BYU Arts Express. We hope to see you this summer so that you can rejuvenate and recuperate from this last school year. Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us for the Artful Teaching Podcast. We hope you enjoyed this conversation on STEM and the arts. Subscribe to our podcast for future episodes on arts integrated science, social studies, and literacy.
Artful Teaching is made possible by the BYU Arts Partnership and the McKay School of Education. Thank you to Tina McCulloch for hosting this series, and to our editor, James Houston. And special thanks to all of the teachers who are changing lives while serving in schools.
If you like what you heard, please leave us a review and share with a friend. We believe artful teaching can change the world. And you can find all our episodes at advancingartsleadership.com, along with lesson plans, blogs, downloadable resources for the classroom, and more. Or follow us on social media at Every Child, Every Art. I'm Heather Francis.
And I'm Callie Phlox, wishing you an artful journey.